Do it, lady.
Yes, what's happening? Oh my god, I didn't even plan to do that, and you fell for it still. Hook, line, and sinker. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. It's like Flemish. It's like you were in my head and we rehearsed it. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. There's a new angle last night as well. No, it's not a new angle. Nothing has changed. Why is Hook sinking? Because of loop theory. Because he knows he'll just respawn. He'll just come back and have to go through it again. Dev's new angle. It was a new angle last night. Jeepers. Jeepers. Pay me no tensions. Pay me no tensions. So yeah, I'm assuming this is going to be the tank. Lightning Ledger, level 2 apprentice. Well done. But I'm learning more about the layout of your house. There's a window beside you. There's always been a window beside me. When I got here, you were already in your little square, and it looked like this at the same. Ah, right, okay, because it was in a wee tiny square. Right, okay. But never been visible. It was previously. I used to be this way towards my computer, and it was behind me, and you could see it. But that might have been pre-your time. Sounds stalkerish. You will never find me. Level 29 Rune Knight. Nicely job. But it is also Thursday, which means it is Friday Eve. Tomorrow is Friday, so it's essentially the weekend. I'm so excited. Just did not be at work for a couple of days. It's going to be class. And then next week we have a long weekend because we have the bank holiday. And it's going to be even classer. But what is the crack? How are you getting on? Why is that saying new activity? What the fuck are you talking about activity feed? Stop being weird. Stop being weird. OBS. Stop it. So I'm assuming this is going to be my last stream of Silent Hill. Just going by how long I think I've left. But then again, it is very, very skill dependent as well. If I keep dying, might not be possibly. Exactly. I ask Flemish that all the time. Ask him what? Where I live? Or is Friday already the weekend? Or is it about loop theory? Stop being weird. Alright, okay, yeah, I can see that. And so you get through the puzzles and stuff here. Well, it'll be grand. Will we just power through the rest of the night? If it takes us to 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm working from home tomorrow, I can be tired. Fuck it. I could just sit in my pajamas by my computer and put on a... Or the Emperor tank. Just lurking today, Cyberpunk. I seen that in the Discord as well. You were chatting away about Cyberpunk as well by James Lee. James Lee! So I might just jump straight into the game as well. We just got out of the prison because we'd spent all our time in the prison, and we've just got the labyrinth at the end of the last stream. So Flemish tells me. McKinn's, what's happening?
Funny you should say that there, Andrew. I remember getting blocked one time and joining the rob by an accident.
Exactly. So I know I'm really enjoying this game. It's difficult and challenging, but it's good. Good. My favorite McKinn's out of all the McKinn's. No, you got to the hotel. You told me this was the labyrinth. You said the last place was the prison, and now I'm in the labyrinth. I'm just going by what you said, Flim Flam. I didn't even see how far he's got to the boss with that one. Well, it'll be grand. I don't like it whenever something's highlighted on my OBS and it's like a red box. It annoys me. Dear, level 27 as well. Fuck, these are amazing. No, you got through the labyrinth last week and ran away from the Goblin King's crotch, and now you're in a hotel. No. But because of loop theory, we've looped back again. You see, that's what's happened. Wait, where is it? Where's what? Suck it, all the other McKinns. I know other McKinns. How dare you? You might be. Well, they could be. They could be. Sean, what's the story? Welcome in. So I think we explored the this floor and we explored the bottom floor, but we didn't go up the stairs. I have to be very wary about what button I press as well for my map. Leo's treat. Leo doesn't get no treats. She doesn't deserve them. She's a bad egg. Wait. That's just all my weapons. She deserves all the treats. She will die of death. Just about to buy some American Truck Sim. Nice. I tried to get into those sorts of games, but never really could. What am I looking at the window for? Am I hearing double audio? I am hearing double audio. Obviously, don't give her all of them, just one. Yeah, well, the redeem hasn't come up yet. There's some, or delayed audio? Why is it so delayed for? It's a weird one. That's new. Could be because I'm just trying to pull two different capture cards in the one go. No, it's not. One capture card. I hate you altogether. Yeah, the audio's definitely delayed. Capture card's been a wee funny bugger today. Well, I might try something. Give me a wee second. Wait, hold on. Where are you coming from? Oh, that's the back. Oh, does this have audio? Shouldn't it? No, it doesn't. No. I was having trouble actually getting on the capture card. I don't getting on earlier. It seems to be working now. It just has a really badly delayed audio, which is weird. Obviously, don't give her all in one go. I know, but I can, and I will. I will try this one. So if I swap you over the cap card, it's the card with the cap. Do that so it makes it all nice and pretty in the background. Right, and then we flick the capture card audio back on. And then obviously I have to bring that audio source, or I have to bring that source out, otherwise I can't see it. New window. Over here. Earphone, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi? Neither. It's a dongle. It's not. There we go. We're simpatico now. It's like a dongle that comes with it. You can have it in Bluetooth mode, but I tend to like the dongle because it just connects straight away. And it means it's not going to interfere with me and any of my other Bluetooth devices. I'm not getting them there. So Wi-Fi then, so minimal delay. Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't the headphones that was the problem. It was the... Oh, so this is what this key does, right? Okay. It was the actual source I was using. Ah, for fuck's sake. Your light's a bit shit, James. There's a fucker going to be in here, isn't there? What would happen, right, what would happen if Hook was employed here and there was coats up here he had to reach? He wouldn't be able to do it. Did you see the video of him having to climb through the window? That was fucking hilarious. Oh, fuck. Right, okay. Jesus, that was well done.
Tell me what you want.
See, I told you it was there. Told you it was there.
Excuse
He had to
me?
get the big ladder out. He did.
No.
Now, to be fair,
What do you say? No.
if you
No.
know what Sylvanian families
I'm
is,
not going to give you a treat if you call me that.
that's
what do you
also
say?
that's all Sylvanian family props.
Please.
there. Do you see her tail? Look, I see. If I lift this treat box, is her tail going to start wagging? Oh, there's slight movement in it. Keep an eye on that tail. Watch it. Watch the tail. Watch the tail. What is this I have? Is this for Cleo? The tail's going. Her tail's going. Is she wagging? Wagging. Nom 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 nom. Treat, 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 treat. I've been informed that it now comes up randomly. Yes, so Flimosh used to spam it at the very start. So now I have it set on a random timer that it doesn't activate until then. So, as per usual with all...
Exactly. Mr. Madison, what
you just said as per usual with all
is one of the most
restrictions we have to put on the stream, it's because Flimosh took the bus.
At no point in your rambling,
henceforth,
incoherent response
I know.
were you even close to anything that could be considered
well, I'm sorry, Sean. I thought I did well.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I apologize profusely for everything he has done and said.
Wrong would have done just fine, but
we accept your apology and we thank you for your charitable service. You look like a person that's going to come in and get me. Oh, no. Just break glass. Break glass! Mate, what is happening? Are you still streaming?
Umaru, you sure you want to do that right now?
Game. I mean, he buys me Lego, so it's grand. He doesn't buy me Lego, though. And I mean, Lego's a great way to build upon a relationship. It's good for building foundations. I knew you were going to be there. Fucking knew it. The cam's still on. Are you complaining? Are you complaining? It's the puppers. It's the puppers. May is currently playing Resident Evil 2 at the moment as well. Oh, it's another apple. I don't know why I'm collecting for it, but apparently it's important. Fucker. Yarg! Mate, you have a walk-on? I don't know if you can actually hear me. You have a walk-on noise as well. I don't know if you've heard it. Bearish, thank you for signing the ledger, buddy. You absolute ledger yourself. Yeah, so hopefully getting the rest of this game wrapped up today.
Ready!
I'm sorry.
Imagine I'm walking noises. I know! Oh, I should have just went down and slapped her. Ready? What is happening? The fruit is actually very important. Keeps the doctor away. I have heard that an apple a day, but I've like 2 of them now. I can't read the medical records. I can just look at the outside of it. That's cool. Is there medicine? This is why I could become a doctor. I had no patience. No problem, buddy. Not all heroes wear capes. Doctors are shaking in their boots. See, the problem was when I was training to become a doctor, they wanted me to give intravenous drugs, but I didn't believe in it because I thought it was all in vain. Thought it was all in vain. Spence, welcome on. What is happening? Hello, lady. So does this open up where I was previously? Yes, it does. You right, love? I'm over here. Come get me. I'm going to call the police. Nope, nope. I'm really going to call the police now. Fuck. Yar! Rar! Happening, Big Smoke? Not much. Hey, how you getting on? How's the rest of Kazan treating you? Oh, so this is the other side of the upstairs, right? Okay. The upstairs, the downstairs. Break in. Oh, this is booze in it. Yes, let's go. I tend to use what reminds me of people. Yeah, so do I. I'm the same. So it means then whenever I'm in the middle of something and a noise plays, I know that person's come in and they've done their first chat and stuff as well. If anybody's looking for a walk-on as well, definitely look, help me up in Discord and send me what you want to put on. If it's shorter, the better. So if it's a couple of... Boy, elevator. I don't think it's any of these. I need to change yours to something RE2 related. It does become my thing now at the moment, doesn't it? I do enjoy the RE2. Something. When it gives it away so far in advance, it's normally like a bug. Or that person running down there. I'm not going to follow you because I know what you're at. 214. 214. 214. And okay, what's happening? Welcome on. Just had shopping delivered wrong for the second time in 2 weeks. But they delivered the wrong items, or was it to the wrong person? So if the radio's going off, it's usually anything but a mannequin. Yeah, yeah. Because when they're still, the radio doesn't go off until they activate. Not going down there yet. See, I can see you right there. Dead. Oh, it's not going to let me break. Oh, there's nothing there anyway. I'm fine. I'm fine. Rifle rounds. They get some mannequins with him. Yeah, when they jump out. Yeah, because I've got. That's how they get you. That's how they get you. Last week they tried to give me someone else's shopping. This week they left out half my own. Oh, for fuck's sake. DHL left a parcel in the wrong house yesterday. I had to go hunting for it. Just tell them that it wasn't delivered. In the case of the mannequins, yeah, oh, for fuck's sake. Let's go to the shop now because the last time we ordered online, half the shopping was left in the van. For fuck's sake, that's a nightmare. I tend to just go in now anyway because I like the... We found that whenever we ordered online, they gave us shitty fruit. You know, the stuff wasn't of the greatest of qualities. Let's put it that way. So now at least I get to pick out my fruit and veg. Is that you over there hiding? Maybe. Oh, no, you're there. Fuck you. Oh, you got me, I think. Oh, got me good. Got me good. So I phoned and said it wasn't delivered, and then they argued with me that it was. Sons of bitches. I know. It happened to me once as well. It was Modern Warfare 2. They delivered it to an empty house across the street that nobody lived in. And I was like, for fuck's sake. I'm going to do some shoutouts as well. Get spades done first. Oh. Must be a remnant of loop theory. That's what that is. Understandable. Great fun. Tried calling to figure out and they just closed. Oh, for fuck's sake. Share of bastards. See? Share of bastards. Fuck on here. Right, okay. Can I go out onto the veranda? No. This room is a complete waste. How is the audio levels and stuff as well? Can you hear the game okay? Sounds great. Thank you, sir. See, What's pissed me off is the delivery guy even told me when I asked him there's stuff in the trolley, and he said there wasn't. It wasn't for delivery. The stuff was the other pack of water and 2 crates of Pepsi, and it was the Pepsi. It was a Pepsi Max. Son of a bitch. We'll get him. Sounds like Iceland. They all do it. They all do it. The worst one I ever had was I used to work in game, and it was grand, but you did have the odd, like, really, really enthusiastic member of the public that would come in and chat to you, which was fine in the shop. But one day I got a Tesco's delivery, and one of the guys who came into the shop was the delivery driver, and he just started walking around my house looking at all my stuff. No, this is where you live. Oh, this is class. And I was like, get the fuck out. Deliver my stuff and get the fuck out. And they slap them. We'll all slap them in again. We'll find them. We'll find them, and we'll steal all their slippers. Please do, thoroughly. Let's get them. And move all their stuff an inch to the left. It'll drive them mad. They'll never know who did it. We'll blame Reddy. We'll say Reddy did it. Who can bite their ankles? We'll only steal their left slipper. We won't even we actually won't. We won't steal any slippers. We'll just make all the left ones slightly damp. For no reason. I can hear you. I don't like that. There's a kind of red room with an exit on it, so I'm going to explore around here first to see what's happening. But the heel of the slippers, I know. This is the encouragement I need. You're all amazing, and I get no problem. I get that sometimes. There's times you're in a real kind of annoyed, bitchy mood. Jesus, Mary? There's times you're in a really annoyed, bitchy sort of mood, and my sister's the worst for this. I'll phone her up and I'll be, oh, I'm really annoyed about this thing. And she'll give me reasonable and logical and adult responses. And I'm like, no, this is not what I want. You have to join in my anarchy and kind of the craziness. Stop giving me logic. Winds me up. I would rant with you. I know, Sierra. I know you would. I know you would. I wish that every time they'd step somewhere, a puddle of water would appear. Or their slippers or their shoes will keep squeaking. So, saying Mary is that way. And as we know, Mary is quite contrary. So we're going to explore here first. Right? Just in case there's any ammo. Ammo. None. The apples don't go in the fireplace. We've learned this now. Room 107. Cleaning stuff. Room 107. Okay, so that's downstairs. I have multiple keys here. Multiple keys and no doors. With every footstep would be a puddle of water. I also do like a good rant. Also, some arsehole beeping his horn at me when I was crossing the road the other day. Didn't stop. I would just stop in the middle of the road. I would literally just stop. Maybe even sit down. Just to wind them up. That annoys me. And the other thing that kind of annoys me recently, and it's a wild stupid thing. It's a petty thing. It's not even petty. I find it weird and it makes me uncomfortable. There's young kids in our street, and they're not like really, really young, but they keep knocking on my front door asking if I want to buy one of their pictures. And I'm like, where are your parents? Why are you doing this? This is so weird, and I don't want to buy your pictures. And you tell people, I was telling people working on, oh, but that's cute. And I was like, no, it's weird. They could knock on the wrong person's door, or... Is this open? No. It's not open. They could just knock on the wrong person's door. They could... Also, why am I giving them money for pictures that they do? Why? Why is this happening? Which floor am I on now? I'm on the second floor again. Was I already here? Oh, maybe this was on the other side. Oh, birds! Feckin' birds. That is super weird. Are they Hook's Age? They're about that slowed right down in front of them. I know. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable at all with it. And I keep saying them though, but it's every day now they land at my front door and they're like, mister, do you want to buy pictures that we drew? And I'm like, no. I'm sure they're wonderful, but no. I have my own kids that draw me pictures. Well, they don't draw me pictures anymore, but if I wanted pictures, they could draw me a picture. What is this? I have to shoot that? Apparently so. That has gone somewhere. Okay. This is room 216. Don't think I've been here yet either. Ooh, get to break a door. Oh, who is it? Where are you? Is it a bug? Can't even see the fucker. Let's stop all the noises. You're really freaking me out. So I was telling people at work about it, and they were like, oh, no, it's super cute, them kids coming and sell pictures. I'm like, what am I going to do with the pictures then if I buy them? You know, if I feel bad and I'm like, oh, here's money, kid. What do I do with the picture then? So what was that guy doing in the bathroom and he's like, that's a bit weird. Stick me around there I was previously. It does, loop theory. See, it looped me around to the other side. Loop theory. Oh, fuck. Lady? I've been working on the railroad. Right. I don't know where she came out of. Is it up for my actual maps? It is. Right, so there was a door around there, the employee lounge. I can't get that one yet. And I got the other side to explore as well by the cloakroom and the boarding room. Right, okay. Need to work out the social skills. Can't make friends if you stab them. Well, it depends. It depends. Some people like that. Some people like it. Right. Let me see. Go check this map again. Check all the different floors. So the third floor. I don't think 318. Did I get a key to 318? Let me see. 107 312 312 I have a key to. So that's first floor. Great, we don't judge as long as we keep our distance. As long as it's only a flesh wound, we're fine. So 312, I can't get to you. That must be on the other side. It is. It's up. Is it the other side? 312. Where the fuck are you? Oh, it's down there waiting for you. 312. I don't know why that rhymed. Just did. Was that the direction I wasn't going to go because I heard Mary? We'll go up and go up. Wait. Because I went the other direction. I went kind of a detour. As long as the stabbing is consensual, it's fine. Oh wait, I did go this way. Oh no, I didn't go in here. Fuck! Got me. This wee room's filled with ammo. Lovely. And what are you? Bolt cutter. Bolt cutter. Through the bolt cutter. That is true. That is true. They're allergic to bolt cutters. Does it have something to do with this lift up here? No, it takes a 3F key, which I don't have. Right. Me, Grimlock, need new strategy. Right, so 318. I can't get to, so I'm gonna have to go the whole way down, I think, to the first floor. There is a door there on the second floor that I haven't opened, but I think it's a staff door, so I can't open that yet. So we'll go back down to the lobby. No joke, though. Love a pair of bolt cutters. They're so satisfying. I am terrified of them. Just with the sheer amount of force you normally have to put in to try and break something. I don't like them. I'm like, I'm going to cut through my fingers or something. I wonder what I'm supposed to do with this music box. Is the apple supposed to go here? Nope. No apples. No bueno. I'm going to go on and do a quick shave. Shave. Thank you, sir. Yeah, one of the tough jobs for Angler is best, but a small pair in the bug-out bag is... for the bug-out bag, though. Oh, right, okay. I haven't really used them, or needed to use them, before. Did I ever get a key for this? No. Right, let's see. Where am I going? So the Lakeshore Restaurant, that's... whatever's in there still needs done. But there's that door, 107. We should have a key to that door now. Do 107. Or we could just run into the door. Through fences and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. As you can tell, I've already been through a lot of this area and broke stuff. That's at the cafe. It's this way. By break stuff, I mean kill guys. Look at this person up here, eh? What are you at? What's your game? And are you there swaying so someone jumps out at me here? I fucking knew it. Look at that. Look at that.
Because
Waffles was happening.
than pancakes.
Didn't find this all particularly silent. In fact, it's quite noisy. It is the most squelchy of the games. The absolute visceral and fucking horrific noises that comes off this game shocking. Waffles, what's the story? Tell me this, are you coming back to streaming on Monday as well? Is that gonna is Monday gonna be your regular thing now? If so, people give Waffles a follow. Oh fuck! You got me last time too, yeah. Watermelon crunch on steroids. It is. It's like somebody slurping on a packet of crisps. I have a few occasions in the bag after securing them and needing out. I have a good length of steel cable for securing doors if needed. My God, you're just ready for the apocalypse, aren't you? Right. Okay. Fine, it's fine. Note to staff. Better not get you slacking off. Yeah. Sweep leaves the garden. Then what? Then you can get back to the fireplace. Oh, were they cold? And some dickhead decided not to let them. Yes, sir. I'll be back on Monday. Another day added to the mix once as well. Ooh, nice. What do you think of the playing? Is it going to be more Fallout, or is there other games like Simpsons Hit and Run? Digest. Pays to be prepared. I would say so. I would say you're very handy in an emergency. I am not so handy in emergency. I'm like, people are like, oh my god, that kid's trapped down a well. There, can you help? And I was like, well, I could probably change your Wi-Fi password for you. Yeah, it's commonplace. Common pancakes. Common pancakes. Was there a waffle stream today? Not today, but Monday there was. He came back on Monday, played some Fallout, and it was fucking brilliant. The best of crack. I tried and finish one of the modded Fallout. Excellent. It looked difficult as fuck as well. I wonder if I can get her without her thing me. Oh, she's stabbing. She's stabbing. Fuck. Take that, Santa. Fuck you, Canada face. Anybody that doesn't know, Tank is a loud and proud Canadian. Did you see the... I don't know how serious they were. I've seen a whole pile of TikToks. And they were about American people giving off. They're, oh my god, this is ridiculous. For the first time ever, the United States has to go up against two teams and everyone else just goes up against one. And it was because they were up against Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I don't know if it was a take the piss or if it was real. But it was fucking funny. Followed yesterday, but you had to catch a stream. Yeah, Monday looks to be the main event, and then another one added throughout the week. Awesome sauce. The red card was BS. Oh, I didn't watch it. I'm not mad. I don't watch sports. What's that noise? The fuck? Fucking knew it. Take that, Batman! I don't watch much, to be honest. Fell asleep with a baseball game once as a kid. I like WWE. That's my sports. I don't like anything else. Sir? Just because the last time I fucked me up with his breath. How you find Silent Hill anyway? It's on my 2 playlist. It is phenomenal. It is brilliant. Like, it is horrible, disturbing, but it is an absolutely great game. Having a lot of fun with it. Ooh, where are you the key to? Fireplace? Yes. Let's go. Oh, because it did say sweep up the leaves and then you come back to the fireplace. Baseball is a religion to you? That's batshit crazy. Partially blame the jet lag, but by God, baseball was born. Fight, 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 fight. This area is amazing. Yeah, I see what you did there because it's a maze. I like it. I like it. Ready? Everyone has the right to be wrong in opinion. It's okay. But you not find because you're American, you're wrong more. Like, is that not a thing? We're going back to the fireplace apparently, and to the house which is making the spooky noises. Very true. Like yours, like yours to enjoy baseball. Oh, shade. The shade. Where are we going? Where are we going? Right, so one here's done. So we're going back, and it's the second floor, isn't it? That has the fireplace, or is it the third floor? Third floor has the fireplace, right? Okay. So these cunts going to be back out here again. So you're not going to be there. That door's open. That wasn't open before. Don't like that. Just go fucking run. James, we're running. We're running. Holy fuck. I'm agreeing with Flimosh. Oh, I know. I know. Not that that was terrible, to be fair. I don't get the praise it got. I didn't play it. I've seen a few people play it. Asher seemed to really enjoy it. So we're still going on up. We're going up, 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 up. Bro, I'm just giving you shit. Yeah, Tank enjoys the banter. Tank is emotionally Irish. That's back place, right? Okay. Oh, I got ambient music when I walked on. It was just like, creepy music. Right, fireplace. Oh, that's a little doll. That's like the one that was broken before Cinderella. Right up there. Like that. James fucking Hyde.
God damn it.
Trish Squash, it's pretty off the wall. Wasn't bad now I lit at it. Sports snacks are good there. Ah, right. What's happening? The ladder man himself. Hook was in a ladder match today. I just shoot him in the face. Well, you probably can shoot him in the face. I just can't shoot him in the face. Ooh, sex lunges. Fucking Hook Hardy, I know. My God, Swanton Bomb off his own house. Oh, no. Screaming. The face vagina does nothing. Alright folks, I'll get back to chat in a wee second once I've dealt with this cheeky boy. We're going. But thank you very much for the check-in, brother. Die, motherfucker. Thank you, ready for the check-in on? Welcome. Willkommen. Oh, what am I sort of us? All's well, man. How are we getting on? We're getting on good. We're getting on good. We're making progress. Ooh, boss progress as well. Nice. Fucking Hook Hardy. The only sports are fencing and figure skating. Gosh, welcome, man. What is happening? What is the story? I can't judge. I watch sports for the same. Cassie, welcome on as well. Jesus. The full house tonight. That goes well. I'll replace Jeff the next time he goes off on one, which won't be long. I'm a sad little old man. We all are. Evening, how are we? This creature was screwed at the bulbs on the big shade panel ceilings. I know, just keep falling over. One of the, when you fight Grey Fox in that room, you would just be all, yeah, I can't do my thing. I'll just lick you to death. My first check-in, I think it's your second. There's a guild ledger. There is a guild ledger. So what happens is every time somebody checks in, they go up a level every stream. Now, the levels of all the people who check in go against the boss at the end of the stream, and if you beat the boss, everybody gets an extra level up. Nice wee week today. It's not been bad so far. It's Friday tomorrow. Level 1, let's go! Quick everyone, let's break it by having too many people check in. It is on... Gosh, thank you very much for checking. It is on a queue system, so it won't break. Blimosh has probably already tested it. I love being a rogue. Hook got, I think it was level 18, Hook got there, and it was Dark Knight. He's all, I'm never leveling again. I'm never leveling up again. And everybody was like, right, we have to beat the boss tonight, so it levels him up automatically, and he has no choice. And he was like, no. He was not a happy bunny. Fuck. Oh, it's behind me. Right, okay. Just locked me out of that room. Right, okay. Bunch of jerks. They did it on purpose, so just to get you. Right, so where am I now? I think I've already been through all here. Oh, this is going to take me through the other side. But what was the crack with the wee figurine? What does that get me? Check this wee room out first. Check out the bathroom. Can't check out the bathroom. I needed to take a shit, and I can't now. For fuck's sake. Or druids. You create a system that makes everyone do things Hook doesn't like. I approve. Yes. That is my only goal in life, to both annoy Hook and Flimosh, and if it's at the same time, wonderful. But unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a way they slag off both Evil Dead and Linkin Park at the same time. A lot of blood in this room. Just saying. Just saying. I think I've already been here. I have. There's a padlock I don't know the combination to. But I bet you if I check my shit, they might be. Well, both are shit. So it's hard to slag both of them. I thought you loved Evil Dead and Bruce Campbell and all that. Why'd you have a can of paint? Fingering. Right, 202, 302. Right, 202. I think that's on the other side as well. I can't get that. I do. But I also acknowledge that they're actually not actually amazing films, but they're entertaining. They're fun films. We could acknowledge that. So I'm level 3 now. 202 is miles away. Bottom floor's enough done. Except the employee section. I can't get in there yet. Entertaining and brilliant for the budget they had. Oh, definitely. Like, they did not have much money to make them films, and like Sir Sam Raimi came up with a new kind of camera angle and everything. You know, when they did it with the board and everything at the very start, and that was really cool. That music box. I'm assuming that's where the figurine goes, but it looks like there's space for 3 of them and not just 1. Ah, there's a cloakroom section over there on the 2nd floor I never explored. At least I don't think I did. Right, 2nd floor then.
Sorry, we're going streaking through the quad and into the
Streaking.
gymnasium. Come on, everybody!
Look, thank you very much. 95 stream streak. My God, you're a little bit obsessed. A little bit obsessed. I like it. Yeah, because I didn't do any of this because there was a fucker that ran over there and I was just like, right, I'm going in this door. Oh, there's a save point in here. Ooh, there's a big picture. There's a bird, a lion, a man getting stabbed, a bull, and a winged fellow. Looks awfully like Prometheus. Read. We're going to read a book. We have time. Oh, I'm just collecting books now. Right, okay. Save point? Yes, let's go. Actually, they're making my back in Evil Dead 1 until after the 2nd film from memory. Did they? Oh, very good. A lot of people just got curious then. The room must have been cloaked. I was bored and watching 2022 Texas Chainsaw waiting for the delivery worse than I remembered. I don't think I've seen that one. I don't have fond memories of it anyway. I enjoy horror games. Horror movies, maybe not so much. What is this? Oh, I might put the books in here. Some order. It's, how many is there? There's 4? Is there another book laying about? Yes. Pride Before the Fall. Has this got to do with that picture behind me? Hang on, so let's see. Pride Before the Fall. Revelations, the understanding. The one who soared, stalwart to the end. So, is it the positions that's on the picture? I mean, let's look, right. So, it's the lion on the same side as the bird, and then the bull on the same side as Prometheus. But is it the other way around because of the one who soared? Are you there? The lion here, just because of the angle they're at? Right before the fall. Nope, not an apple. Or them two the other way around. It's definitely just a 4, isn't it? Oh, loans out and just made very little from being banned and whatnot. Right, okay, yeah. It's a funny looking zoo. It is. Can't have food in that library. No talking. James is quiet because James is like, nah, not I say a word. It's a lion. Eagle. Could it be the other way around, maybe? Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong. So you are... Which book are you? Can you tell me which book you are? There we go. Got it. Also, how would that work? How does it know which book's in the right position unless it has some sort of like NTF chip or something in the book? Like, it has to be some sort of advanced technology to know that. Ooh, that's not good. Right, okay. Like, it's not an old tech. It's not like an old puzzle. Brute Force always works. The shelf reads the books, so we're shit. They only have their shelf to blame. Devo. What's this? 217. It's a picture. It's another picture. Well, that's cool, I suppose. That mirror's a bit weird. Don't know the combination. Somebody's going to burst through that door. Or that wall. Wait, can I break through that wall? No. What is this? Oh. Did he get a bulb and paint it red? We're painting the bulbs red. We're painting the bulbs red. Right, so I need to paint a bulb red and then that'll do something. Need to turn a new page. Yes. Bought a book recently on anti-gravity. Haven't been able to put it down. Right, there was the fucker that went up them stairs. Don't know where he ended up. There's stuff in here. Is there stuff in there? No. I was pretty confident at the start of this that I might finish this game tonight, but now I'm kind of like, I'm going to have to do this entire... I'm still not explored this hotel, and I'm going to have to do the entire thing in the nightmare mode as well. I wasn't expecting that door to open. I'm not going to lie. Where did he go? Oh, you're kind of glitched out. Oh, fucker! Your mate's all glitched and you fucked me over. Jesus! Violator! What are you at? You're just on the hotel. Or where exactly, and I'll check. I am on the hotel. Lakeview Hotel. crawl through that wee hole to get in that room.
It's been a while.
Been a while. What is the crack now, later? How are you getting on? What is the story? You still got a good bit. Mr. Loverboy.
Fucking saying they're on, lad. Give her a bean stack.
You were being stuck at. Mr. Loverman. Shabba. Okay. You know what Hook loves about this game? All the CRTs. It's like, oh, look, CRTs are fucking class. He's got a good bit. How's the man? Hey, don't be asking me. I'm not the man these days. Fucking Hook climbing ladders, breaking into his own house. Did you manage to get the front door fixed as well? Something's... Is it something in here? Not in there, then. What is the point in this room? There's a reason it made me come in here. What was the reason? Notice there's no picture of his face. That was his dad. He sent up a ladder. Yeah, that's why he was so tall. So you're 90% done, the last 10% in the start of hotel. It'll take 3 hours if you're taking your time. All right, okay. I'd already done a good bit of the hotel anyway. But where am I? I'm back here. Right, I might go down and explore these rooms then. My dad was standing at the bottom of the ladder. Emma was also there, laughing her fucking head off at you. Which is the part I enjoyed. I enjoyed the laughs. See you split. Oh, see you. Oh my god. Beans have been giveth. I thought it was Teddy. The great. Sierra, who we can neither confirm or deny is tall. I did see... There's one way to get into the house, definitely. I've always got a leg up. Whee! I'm from Galia. It's not even my second or third time doing that. Jesus, lad, don't be saying that out loud. Alright, so there's a veranda out there, isn't there, I can get through? I never tried. Veranda. Oh no, there's not. I can't get out there. Why did the canal let it? Right, okay. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I don't even care. I don't even care. I don't even want to go that way. Right, so we are going up this ominous corridor with no lights. With what looks... Is it a nurse? It's a fucking nurse or fuck. It's not a nurse. It's one of these boys. Sir? That's that was just an upside down one of them. Did I already come in this room? No, I didn't. That's the problem with hotels. All the rooms look the same. Like they do it on purpose. Give her thine beans, Taga. So if I go around this corner, there's one more room. Oh, and here's a bit empty. Where's the bed? Hmm? Actually, what's the point in this room? No. Right. Vanity mirror? Oh, did I not check that mirror? Did I check the mirror? Oh, that's the one where I have to get the red light, isn't it? Yeah, it is. So there's one more room in this floor. Okay. Keep her lit, Taga. Keep her lit. We are sucking diesel now, sir. That one I can't get into. Oh, hold on. Is that one I have a key for, though? Yes, it is. Well, that is weirdly lit. Look at all this carry on here as well. What does it say? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the sweetest of them all? Peel away the shiny skin and see the rotting flesh within. Oh, right, I have to assemble this again, right, okay. Can it rotate? It can. You look to be there. Jesus, McCanns! Fucking hell, sir.
At Backlash?
Backlash.
Backlash. At Backlash.
Backlash. Backlash.
At Backlash. Backlash.
Nope, nope.
Backlash.
At Backlash. At Backlash.
No, stop. Stop trying to pick up paint. I want to pick up
Backlash.
the butt that's on the floor. No! See, there's one more shard of glass and I can't pick it up.
This is the worst.
It is! Is it not? It is because the window's right here and it just sounds like there's someone knocking at the window. It won't let me pick up that. Keeps trying to make me go for an item. I don't want to go for an item. Can I just go over and pick it up? No. Why do you keep doing this? I don't want to do this. I don't want inventory. I want to pick up that. That is weird, isn't it? There is a shard of glass there that I can't pick up. What if I set one of them down? No. Fuck! Vamash! Is this a glitch or am I doing something wrong? Am I missing a shard? Is that what the problem is? They're not all here? No, I can see it. I can clearly see it there on the floor. Oh no, it's not there now. Right, okay, maybe I'm missing a shard. Oh, there it is there in the ground. Right, that's what the problem was. I was a dumbass. I was alone. Oh, listen. It should be there to be picked up. Yeah. I have no recollection. There you go. So I have to pick up the item. Oh, it's perfectly fixed now because that's how mirrors work. That's why I'm going to go one day a job collecting mirrors so I can see myself doing it. Oh, 2 apples though. It did say about the rotten one, didn't it? I don't like that. What was that about? Oh, I have no reflection. Oh, but there is... Was that? There's a thing there. You're a vampire. Twist! Oh, let me break it. Right, okay. How'd I get that now? It says mirror done. Right, okay. That's it completed. Can't be. Right. I need a bulb. Go to the other room on the other side of the mirror. Oh, right, okay. What is that banging noise? Right, okay, so I have the wee woman now. Right. And there's a lot more. Potentially an hour left. Right, okay. What the fuck? Oh shit, right, there's a couple of them. Well, that was fine. Whew, right, okay. I don't know where I'm going now. Do I have to do the apple thing again, maybe? No. That's it done. Right, okay. You know, fuck it. I'm just gonna run. Oh, yes we will. Yes. Let me do a wee quick shave. But I need to get my bearings and figure out where I'm going now. I have another key to another room. It's on the 3rd floor. But I can't get it. Right, so there's nothing else for me to do on this floor apart from that vanity mirror. But I need a bulb that I'm going to paint red. Don't know why I took that. Items wise, I have a key to 312. Can't get the 312 though. The bolt cutters, I haven't used them yet. Well, that's fun noises. Maybe I need to go outside. Is there rounds here? Gate. I never got that gate. So if I go back to the ground floor, which is just out here on the left, right? Okay. Oh, why is this place turned to shit? It wasn't as bad before. Right, okay. Right, okay. There's still something in the restaurant, too. Yeah, we're going out to the garden. Ah, bolt cutters. Didn't even do the nice, you know, rewarding snapping noise of a bolt cutter. It just went, yeah, disappear. Make it disappear. What are you? Oh, the bulb. Right, okay, cool. Do we read what the fish says? No, we don't. Right, so the bulb gets combined with the red paint. Oh, cannot be opened by hand. How the fuck they open the paint now? Caffeinated Gengar, what's happening? Ah, Silent Hill. Yep, it's British weather. That's the truth. That is the truth. Will I go into the kitchen? It did say that there was something in the kitchen, didn't it? In the restaurant. So if I go in the door, got round to the restaurant, we'll give that a go. But caffeinated Gengar, what is happening? How are you getting on? I am also highly caffeinated today, and I'm loving it. Lots of coffee, and just finished a lovely, delicious monster. Taste the rainbow. Can opener. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Right, okay. So can opener. Open that. So we've opened the paint. That's not how you hold paint, James, but okay. You don't put paint away like that, James. It's going to spill. Silly sausage. So now we go back up and we put the red bulb in that room. And hopefully that fixes... Red is unhinged. Got banned for saying I want to smash meat. Got a ban. Got a ban for the offense against meat. It is offensive to steak. Steak does not. You know what? Maybe I'll get through in roughly an hour. Oh, no way. Where am I going? Ah, wrong way. I'm going in here and then to the right. Yeah, I was checking. There seems to be an error. Well, do you know what though? It's a skill thing as well. Potentially it'll be longer or a lot longer because I'm a fucking scared of cat. But let's fucking go. Seems like I was hitting some roadblocks, but he gets through them quicker than expected. Really? Am I smart? Deed done. The fuck does that mean? Fucking don't like us. What deed is done? What are we talking about? Right, Lakeview Hotel. The employee elevator is the only thing I haven't really unlocked. And then there's the whole side up here, the padlock. I never got through the padlock. Smirt! Oh, is that what's in here? Deed done? Right. I got it. Wait, is this side deed? Derp. Maybe your deed. No, it said deed done. So you're done. D-O-N-E done. Let me see. Done, donned. Deed donned. There we go. Sweet. Wait, what's the key for? Employee elevator. Right, we got it. We got it. Love watching this game. It's a great game. It's so unnerving though. That's the only thing. The employee elevator is on this floor. Just keep going over to the far side and go left. It was down here, wasn't it? Right, okay. Ooh, yes, so a save point. I don't know why, but the wee red rooms kind of make me feel a wee bit better because I know at least it's a bit of a safe room. But it's going to throw me at some point where it has something attack me in it. Maybe even this one. Anything in here? No, Resident Evil lied to me. Ooh, what's in here? What the fuck? What the fuck's this? What the fuck? What is going on? Why is it tell me to put my stuff in here? Although this could be where it slows down. Right, okay. So I have no weapons now. Oh fuck, it wants me to go on without weapons. Fuck. Left, because you're too happy for the left. How are those items making me too happy for the left? What a shit though. Oh my god, right. I don't even have a map. No items. Fuck, you're joking? No items? What's in here? I don't have a light. Shit. What's in here? Anything I can use? What are you? Oh, I'll just throw this at them. Fuck's sake. How's that shotgun pistol, massive pipe, and God knows what those syringes, bottles of medicine you had that were so heavy? I know. They're so heavy. Let's see if there's anything in there. Let's maybe go on for a dice in, or die in here. I thought there was something above me. I don't even know what the layout is. See it? I wonder if they're sound or movement based. What are you? Alright, so this is where the gemstones get. I have to get like 1 million of them. Fuck. Oh, I got ammo! Lethal! That'll help me. It won't help me. Health drink? Right, okay. This game's so real unrealistic. I know! We're running! Fuck you, Steve Buscemi. Nothing works. Right, okay. Right, so they can't come into the rooms with me, no? Nothing works. Nothing works. Can't even use my map to see. Throw the bullets at them. Yeah, I could try that. Give it a go. Okay, that's not helpful. The onions? Bring the onions. Let's go. They're allergic to onions, so I like dogs. Oh dear. I'd crawl through there. I have another dice. Right, okay. Okay. That's cool, that's cool, that's cool. Open this. Somehow I feel I have to get options of what rooms I can run into. Piece of the puzzle from the OG game. Oh, shit. Don't know if you can follow me in here. Is there any items in here? Yes, there's a health potion. Sweet. Potion? Potion. My potions are too powerful for me, for you. Shit. Right, okay, I have nothing to attack that guy with. Potion seller. Another die. Fuck you, Steve Buscemi. Oh shit, no. Wasn't what I wanted to do. In here. Have you reserved a Steam controller? I have. Oh shit, they can get me in here. Right, okay. Oh no, I haven't reserved one. I'm Johnny, one hot guy. Oh yes. Yes, lad. Oh, map. Yes. Wait. Buttons? Nope. Right, okay, you're just watching me. I'm going to sit in here and watch some TV. Fuck you, Steve. Oh, shit. No, you can get me from there. Fuck. Right, okay. Right, room over there is locked. Safe. Can't do anything with a safe. Locker room. Which of these rooms have I been in? I don't think I've been in that wee room. The one that is just adjacent to me. Fuck, it's dark. Elevator. That's why I haven't been in here. What the fuck is that? Oh, you. Right. That's the elevator. That's where I came out of. The manager's room I couldn't get on. I could do. TV room. That's where the gem box is. Circled my way around. Kitchen safe. Use a PS5 controller. Much better. Oh. PS5. I have like 10 of them. I'm getting sick of games not being proper compatible. Yeah, that's a thing as well. I'm playing on a PS5. Oh, where's this basement? Where'd this come out of? I have to go on the elevator to go down to the basement. No, it looks like there's stairs somewhere. I don't have a key for the stairs, though. Laundry room I was in. I was in that room. Went into the cafeteria. Kitchen. Squelchy, squelchy, squelchy. I still can't get in there. Can't get in that way. Do I have enough of the jewels to actually do this puzzle? Let's see. Something on here, is there? Do I have to match the picture in some way? Right, so what we got? We got people? Oh shit, right, okay. That rotates them. Right, okay. Right. But what is it supposed to be? Is there like a picture or something that they match it up to? Something on the desk? No. Is there... Ah, what's this? What's this? So it has to be... Oh, the wee men are standing on a wee boat. That's what it is. The wee men are standing on a wee boat. So if I pop you... there... But you... Nope. You are going on up here. Or no, well, you're really going on the opposite side, but I have to move him out of the way. So if you go there... Wee man on a wee boat. But you there? Ah, so it's a combination. 4714. Right, got it. So we go back to the safe. When it's safe to do so. Check that code again. 7414. 7414. There we go. Easy peasy. Nice little job. Basement key. Got it. Basement is that door right across from me. Nope, it's not a videotape. Oh, did I watch the videotape as well? No. Well, that was fine. Right, okay, okay, okay. Rizzy pizzy. But there's the billabay. There we go. There we go. We're sucking diesel now. Ah, it's another room full of them fuckers. Right, okay. Let's regroup. So, there's only really 3 rooms here. I have to... Right, the maintenance room, the boiler room, and the liquor storage. Liquor storage. I am assuming... Right, we'll go around to the right first. Toss this jabroni. Sir, you calm yourself. Right. It's a valve. Cool beans. Right, I can go out that way. Liquor and storage and boiler room. I'm assuming boiler room's going to be my next protocol. I can't do anything but you're standing there, mate. Sitting licking his lips. Son of a bitch. Working it now. Fuck you, Steve Buscemi. Not going the same way I'm going. Son of a bitch. So there's this room here. I'm just going to go up here. Oh, this is a wee shorty cut. Right, okay, okay, okay. I can live with this. I can live with this. Is there anything in this room? I don't think so. We take a wee juice. Wee juice! Right, okay, so I can't get in the boiler room unless I get this. Fuck you! I still have no light. Wait, what's this? What's this? What are we looking at? Ooh, wee syringe. Nicely job. And a big oil boiler. Venus bar? How the fuck did I get there? Valve, boiler room. I can see a Venus bar over there. Oh, right, there's a door right beside me. Right, okay. That I couldn't get on before. Sweet! And another valve. Did I go back and get that one? Can I take it? Yeah, there we go. Sweet. I was going to say, it's not going to make me look for another one now, is it? Oh, right, okay. And if you turn. Oh, that's a fun noise. Maybe I should have checked this room first to see if there is anything of note to lift. I don't think so. My phone was giving me the notifications. Right, I'm in the bar. Oh, there's a jukebox. Is there any... There's a picture. Better leave. Hey, McFly! Oh, and here's flooded. Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here, McFly? Make like a tree and leave, you idiot. Oh, it's the other figurine, right, okay. But how do we get back? Ooh, right, okay. It's not letting me open the map. Oh, this is down the bottom of the stairs. Right, cool beans. Cool beans. I know where I am now. Why is everything wet now, though? Oh, is it because I was fucking about with switches downstairs? Toluca Lake. Right, I am going to actually take a quick break and run to the bathroom because I need to pee. I will be back momentarily. But if you haven't been here before, what usually happens now is we go to our Be Right Back screen, and there's 2 games that pop up at a time. It's exclamation mark vote 1 for the first game, exclamation mark vote 2 for the second one. I am looking at the wrong camera. And we vote to see which is the best game of all time, and I'll be back in a moment. That was contentious. It really, really was. Apologies for much. The only reason I chose God of War over RE9 is I haven't played RE9 yet. So God of War definitely won that one because I fucking love that game. It's good, but it doesn't really have the legacy most other games there. No, I know. I can see. You can understand why Tetris beat it. For you all crazy taxi rocks. Cassie getting on with the grief. Fair play. Fair play. All right, so we have now got all the wee puzzle pieces. I don't know what order they have to go on here, unless there's like a picture or something to tell me. Or does this make an image? Oh, I have to get my shit. Where's my shit? Oh, where the fuck was my shit? I think it was second floor? Fuck, right, okay. God, I don't even remember which room it was. It's this way? That was the employee room down here. Right, okay. Don't make me fight, fuckers. I don't like it as a cutscene when I'm getting my stuff back. I don't like that. I did not like that entire area downstairs. Who's going to be standing there? Who's going to be behind him? Why was there a cutscene for that? I don't like that now. We're going to go back down now. That area's a gift. It's like 90% safe areas. Well, I suppose it's not too bad. Like, it's not the worst. Why is it here so wet? Why is this so squelchy? Oh, they only go in a certain place? Right, okay. And it has to connect. Right, okay. So you kind of connect there. And so does that one. But you could only connect that way, right? Okay. It has no way of connecting to yourself, right? Okay. Bam, 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 bam. Centerpiece isn't lined up. Does it, oh, it lines up separately, right? Okay. I get you. I'm going to flip her back. I think it was here I had it. Yeah, like that. So then I have to figure out a way that this connects it. Like that. Hmm. That doesn't really connect very well. See, that makes the most sense for that one. And then that connects kind of to this one. And then this one's just an anarchy at the end. That one kind of connects. Oh, what's this? Oh, you have to push the button and it does the thing. Right, okay. Right, okay, I get you now. Don't overthink it. I will overthink it. I refuse to un-overthink it. Right, so. What began with 3, 1 would deplore, 7 kinds of souls, opened door. Trading 2 for 1, it's in the room, but the love of 5 would bring her back home. Haunted by the 2, she would toil away, leaving 1 behind, found away. And there's a reset button. What the fuck does this do? Oh, we reset. Right, so what began with 3, 1, 2, 3. Trading 1 for 2. Away she would roam, but the love of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Haunted by the 2, she would toil away, leaving 1 behind. 1? Nope. Well, 1 was going on our wee house, so one of them's right. I just keep messing with it. Oh no, fucking none of them work now, right, okay. What is this supposed to be? What began with 3, 1 would soon deplore. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Would it help that I point out they're Disney princesses? Yes. What am I missing here? What is the... What is it? What does it carry on with it? You have the right idea, so I'm trying to figure out a number, and that's how many times I turn it. So what began with 3, 1 would soon deplore. 7 kindly souls open the door. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Trading 1 for 2. Away she would roam, but the love of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. And they're all fucking moving. Oh, there we go. That was it. So it was just whatever the last number was. It's a key. 3rd floor. Okay, got it. Told you, yeah, don't overthink it. I was overthinking it. That was my problem. So 3rd floor. It's that padlock. Right, okay. Really creepy tune as well. Why is the hotel staff storing their keys there as well? It doesn't seem to be making much sense. Feels kind of weird to have weapons again as well. Why is the music playing the whole way through it though? We've left that room. So weird. He's got AirPods on. Can't open that door yet. Oh, it's her room that I need to open? Right, okay. I can't go anywhere else apart from here. Lovely. Anything else on here? I don't want to watch a tip until I explore everything. Oh no. Turns out that's the only thing I can do. Watch a tip. Movie time. Yay! James, if you're watching this, you're stuck in a loop. Does it rewind it? He didn't rewind. He wasn't being kind and rewinding. You remember that? They used to charge you if he doesn't rewind your tip. Fuck!
Are you
He's just
typing
foolish.
again? Come on. I don't know why, but I just love it here.
Because you're a weirdo, Mary. That's why. Because you're a
It's
weirdo.
so peaceful. You know what I heard?
Has abused that over doing
Whole
that.
area used
And
to be
taught
a
me something.
sacred
What did they
place.
teach you? That it annoys me. And it
think
sounds
I
like
can
there's
see
something right
why.
outside my window. You know what's going to happen? My son's going to figure this out someday and just go over and just start knocking on that window just to freak me out.
It's too bad we have to leave. Promise you'll take me again, James.
Yeah, so there's
7
himself.
minutes. 7
Mark,
minutes
what's
is all
happening?
I can spare to play with you.
What up, cough boy? Cough boy? You should drive over some Saturday night and knock on the window. Oh, I'd beat him up. I'd throw him up on the roof like the wee fucking badger he is. I know. No believe him. I think it's what we should kind of suspect that they killed her. It was me, Austin. It was me all along.
Hey, there you are. Do you know where Mary is? Come on,
Till
talk to me.
today I learned.
Mary's gone. She's dead.
Pipsy, here for the streak, sad about the gaming. Oh, Tomahawk, what's up? What's the matter? What's wrong? Oh, about the
Why?
No,
Sony disc thing?
it's the truth.
Sons of bitches, hey.
She died because she was sick.
She died because of the pillow talk.
I killed her.
James, you feel like it too. She knows too much.
Killer? Why'd you do it? I hate you. I want her back. Give her back to me.
That's not a normal reaction as well.
I knew it. You didn't care about her. I hate you, James. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you.
Kid, run. He's already killed one person. He'll get you next.
She was always waiting for you. Why?
Because the
Why?
hills be silent, kid.
I'm sorry. Mary, you know, isn't here.
James' reaction when he kills Eddie's more interesting. Yeah, definitely. Storiness is phenomenal. It's brilliant. And I love the fact that it keeps looping over and over again, so he's stuck in his own guilt. Because he acts like the first time he's killed a person. Yeah, I know, and because of loop theory, he does it over and over and over again. You shut the fuck up. I will not shut the fuck up. The evidence is mounting, Filmosh. The evidence is mounting.
James!
Oh, we're in that fucked up part of the hospital, or the hotel now.
Mary?
James! Where are you? I'm waiting.
Here comes another loop. I know.
Waiting for you. Please.
Starts all over again.
Please. Why won't you come?
But where? Where are you?
You're so close now. Please. Don't give up.
Or just give up.
Don't leave me out
51st Date's the video game. I know. Thank you for the butt splash. I mean, the game screams lip theory. James is such a wet blanket. I know. He's just like, he's like Diet Leon. And how long have we been in this hotel room? Because it's all that fucked up, my kid. Theory. No. Lamash does love RE6. Thank you very much, Hook, for the bits, and thank you for letting us know that. Listen here. The chat we had about when you finish it, you know this loop theory is bollocks. It is not bollocks. It is the most truthful thing of all the truths. Right, so we're not going that way. We're going this way. Okie dokie. You have to admit, though, it does heavily point towards loop theory. That James is in a forever loop because of his grief. I can't jump down there. It's the one hole James doesn't want to jump down. Wild man flat out jumping down holes, and then the one time he has to, he doesn't. Turns out, I'm not tipsy. Drinking from 2 p.m. makes you drunk. Ah, that's what it does. I didn't know that. I must try that this weekend. Hogan doesn't. It does not. Not literal time loop. No, like a theory of loop. Loop theory. Like the fact that all the bodies are of James, of previous iterations of James whenever he died, going through this eternal loop of grief that he's caused because he murdered his wife. It's your psychological journey. You know what, Plummash? I know you say this is your favorite game, but maybe you just didn't get it the first time. Maybe you have to play it again just so you can understand it, like we all do. I'm currently in a drinking loop theory. Tomahawk, legend. Throughout the game, he's had his moments repressed his memories and guilt, denial into anger and depression, aka mental and psychological loop. Hook, nail, head. You've hit it. You've hit the nail on the head. You're repressed from the start. He never stops until he sees the video. Yeah, and then he goes back and he repeats the cycle over and over. Forever trapping his psyche in his own version of Silent Hill. Hence why there's certain flashback scenes of previous cycles, i.e. the stuff from the OG game of Floor Square Collapse. Yeah, but explain all these bursts of emotion. I know bursts of emotions came through it. I know, because I've seen it all before. Right, so question mark. I have to keep going down this way. That lower's going to go collapse at some point. But it kind of is situated in such a way it's going to make me cross it and fall down it. Fall on it. The closest person is when Maria shows up and he shouts, "Mary!" Excuse me, princess. Found your wife yet? Have not found her. Akira, I think the fact that she died 3 years ago is a good indication that I shouldn't have found her. So that will need to be positioned somewhere, methinks. As this what happens, I push this along the way, and the weight of it makes the thing fall down. Even Eddie was fighting him, doing so in defense. He wasn't angry with Eddie. Well, Mash, I'm glad that you agree with us on all this lip theory stuff. I pushed and pulled in those things, I know. There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. Obi-Wan Kenobi. He never has anything but cam reaction with Angela. See, Akira, we finally got to the point now where Flemish agrees with us about the lip theory. Angela's because of her experiences, and Eddie does because of being bullied. Thinks James is bullying him. That was a state of mind. James has never actually left the hotel. It's not about the game, but the silent hills that we found along the way. Oh no, this floor is going to collapse. James, no one could have seen that coming. I'm as shocked as you are, kid. Oh, a hole for James to jump down? No. Never. Alley-oop. Oh, looked like Peppo Buzznoll. It's not. That's a thing. Right, music has changed. It's got darker. That's a good point. Makes you think. It does. It does. It's all about interpretation and how we all experience in our daily lives our own lip theory. You know what I mean? I think it's a hotel right now, but maybe that's the drunk lip theory was made long. What, Tomahawk? Why are you talking sense? You're the one man who gets smarter as he drinks. I love the Silent Hill games. They are very good. They are very good. They are very creepy, and even the ones that people aren't overly fussed on, like I like Silent Hill: The Room. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean, remove the evil deeds from thine sight. I thought The Room had its moments as well. The Room was the last great one. Downpour was a bit shit. Downpour. Right, I haven't been in there yet. Oh, well, I can't go up that way. Right, okay. This is where I go. Okie dokie. I wonder what will happen to that floor. So this is that room that we were in before, with the big picture. Picture changed. It's just fucked up. After that, they kept trying to achieve the success of Silent Hill 2. Yeah, but you can't reiterate the same thing over and over again as well. You have to kind of give fresh interpretations and stuff. 3 bring back the vibe, so there's 4. Great era for Silent Hill. I think 2R and F brought back as well. I haven't played F. Flemish isn't the biggest fan of it, but I know that part of the community, Asher played it and he loved it. He thought F was great. Right, we're back here. I recognize this place. I enjoyed it. I know a lot of people have. I suppose it's everybody's own interpretation, really, isn't it? I knew that wasn't going to happen. Jesus, my cans! Fuck hell. I figured out as well, there was a beeping, there was a chime that kept going off whenever the Everdeens came on, and it was my actual activity field dock, for some reason, had volume on it. Made no sense. Well, can't be wrong with Flemish. Akira, see, you know the crack. You know the crack. Like, I loved the environment of F and the story was good, but it was a frustrating experience of a game that made it a slog. Right, okay. Yeah, Twitch add audio. Why add audio? I don't need audio to tell me a redeem's coming up. Just let me hear the redeem. Oh, cool glasses, bro. Can I have? This seems like a room where I fight something. Okay, what's this over here? Oh, it's a lift. Can I go through there? No. No. What about... Where are you expecting me to go there, kid? And nothing in the fireplace. Oh, I have to climb up here. Right, okay. Not the environment they have. Oh, right. Already read that. I read it. No, this place isn't doing great. Go in there. I can see if a wee fucker's hiding on me. She will not be cured. Go on, United. Football. Was that James's wife? Wasn't going to be cured. She was terminally ill. Oh, did you see Gary Chalk got the all clear as well? He had stage 4 cancer. He got the all clear the other day. So for any that don't know, a couple of years ago, my community was did something fucking awesome. They got a cameo from Gary Chalk, who was one of the voice actors for Optimus Prime. He did Optimus Primal Energize. And basement. Why would we want to go there? And about a year ago, he was diagnosed with cancer, and he got the all clear the other day. I know, it was amazing. I remember seeing it when he was unwell, and I was like, oh man, I love Gary Chalk. He's a lovely fellow, and he was supposed to do like a couple of minute message. It was like 15 minutes long. Like it was a good long message. Yeah, it was awesome. It was so nice as well, so heartfelt. This isn't good. Splunch. Splunch. Water, we're gonna do now. Akira, did I give you a wee shout out? Hook? If Akira hasn't been given a shout out, so I'll give him a shout out. Akira is a fellow horror and Final Fantasy aficionado. Does a lot of challenge runs as well in OG Resident Evil games. Well, thank you very much, Hook. Appreciate it. And retro, he does. Technically, aren't we all retro at this point? Akira, what's your opinion on the recent news from Sony that everybody seems to fucking hate? And to be fair, I am in absolute agreement that it's an awful decision and it does nothing but hurt the consumer. I understand from a business perspective why they would do it, but getting rid of digital, or getting rid of physical games, I don't like it. I don't like not owning my games. We had a rant about it last night, me and Hook, and everybody who has streamed at any point today has given off about it too. So Ian was cracking up about it, Mike was cracking up about it, Reddy has messaged me and Hook as well, cracking up about it. Still not, I know, I don't know what's going to happen. I was looking at CEX today, and you can already see the prices of all their physical media going up, because they know people are going to want to start getting everything in. And it's an absolute shame. Why not even limit the amount of discs that they do make, but still make them available? You know, for the likes of collectors. Because what happens, right? Say you're getting someone a gift for Christmas. Say Hook really wants a copy of Halo 17 for Christmas. And I go and buy him a copy. But I just hand him a bit of paper now with the download code on it instead of like a nice box with a disc and manual on it. It's just Sony stock has plummeted, but Sony will do fine. They will be okay. Ian brought out a brilliant point earlier on in his stream, and he was saying the reason they have timed it now is because they don't want to announce that the next PlayStation, the PS6, will be digital only, because the uproar will happen then. Whereas if they announce it now, people will have time to calm down and get over it. So by the time they announce the PlayStation 6, no one will really care anymore. So when they turn around and they're all, oh, it's digital only, no one will give a shit then at that point. And different for the longest time now, with a few exceptions of games have been on disc, so we've not been truly owning anything. This is true, anything we bought digitally, potentially, they could go away at any point. But whenever something really special comes out, I like to get physical media for it. I like to get the disc. Means as well, when I go away on holidays or something and I have no internet, I can bring my Xbox with me and I can just sit and play games and not have to worry about connecting to the internet. Yeah, wrapping on a plastic box with paper inside, big whoop, yeah, woohoo! The code! I am disappointed because I am buying I am buying for console. Yeah, but you like the physical? Yeah, that's true. Ooh, room's on fire. Buy digital zone. Yeah, then pirate doesn't steal. That is a very good point as well. A lot of people keep bringing up. What is Angela doing?
Mama?
Nope, I'm not your ma.
I was looking for you.
No, Kira. It's shit. Do have a knock-on effect in the physical media market? 100%. It's forcing the single market. At the same time, sadly, signs are that it's going to get its way. Xbox have said that the next console won't have a disk drive. Yep, so they're going to go the same way. So's Nintendo. Plus, games are getting bigger. Blu-ray discs only hold so much, even if they're triple layered. So discs, I don't see why they can't move on to a new medium, but it is what it is. But it's inevitable outcome. The antique, yeah, all Spy and Digital's done it.
You're the only one left.
Xbox are doing discs to digital according to their retail leakers. Yeah, I did hear about that as well. That's quite cool. I did see all the memes as well going about the. You remember when the PS4 came out? And Sony were like, "This is how you trade games," and they just handed each other a game. And now it's like, yeah, what? Where's that? Where's that? Where'd that go? Really brought up the point as well. Means there's going to be no more backwards compatible consoles going forward. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They accidentally hired Don Matrick. And COVID excited people having to buy digital. Yeah, that's a fair point as well.
What we're looking for, it's not here.
Music. I mean, most games that have come out, for example, have an install disc.
Thank you for helping me.
But that doesn't mean it would cost more to do double disc. Yeah, but remember that he used to do it with the old Final Fantasy games? It was like 4 discs, 3 discs. Game Pass didn't help. Game Pass was too good of an offer.
Even Mama said it. I deserve what happened.
No, Angela, that is
Oh, your
not
mama was
true.
stick too.
Don't pity me.
Pity the
I'm
fool.
not worth it. Or maybe you think you can save me?
Maybe.
Will you love me?
Why is everyone creeping on
Care
James?
for me?
But if you look at it, media
Feel
plus, you say it's
all
all
my
digital.
pain.
Download the stream, sadly. Physical. Yeah, it's dying out. I like to buy physical stuff for certain games.
That's what I thought.
Do you just have the abundance of pre-owned games? You go in there now. Yeah, it's just all FIFA now. Digital media is the worst way to consume it. We're all fucked by the choice paralysis these days. Yeah. You did bring up that point earlier in Mike's stream about the Netflix effect, where you don't know what they watch.
The knife.
And I love that about streaming because it forces me to stick with the game.
No,
So if something else new and shiny comes along, I don't get as distracted.
Have it your way. It doesn't change anything.
Makes you play with it. I was thinking about this, and I made a joke in someone's stream the other day. And I was like, oh, we should set up a company where we load ISOs on the discs and sell them that way. And I was like, but maybe there's another way to do it. Maybe there's a legitimate way that they're going to allow you to maybe download a game or something onto, say, like a memory card or something. You could actually do that up in a nice box and stuff as well with a cover and store it on the memory card and just put it straight from the memory card. I don't know. It depends on what format it all comes out in. But even for your own collection, external hard drives are the future. Yes, ready? Yes.
It's hot as hell in here.
You see it too? For me, it's always like this.
So her own Silent Hill has been entirely in flames. Right, okay. Bring back cartridges. I know. But then again, with the save file, I suppose it was stored on the console. I'm sure someone will come up with a really cool way that we can still buy games and display them. You know, because I know for yourself, the likes of Halo and stuff, you will want a physical copy of Halo. And with a lot of people, with Final Fantasy, when Final Fantasy 17 comes out, you're going to want a physical version of it. Now, are you there because something else is going to jump out? No. Right, okay. You were just having a wee cuddle. Right, okay. Manager's office, TV room. Why is a lot of these locations already closed off? Is it because James can kind of see them and he's already written his map? James, you've thought ahead, haven't you, kid? Right, it's one of them pole vaulters. Lady. I am not... No one's returning. 312 to be cleared out. Right, okay. There's no real... I don't really have a huge amount of gun ammo, but I have kind of saved as much as I could of the shotgun and rifle, so I'm hoping that does me. So does James see these creatures, but Angela or Eddie, they're just people? I don't even think they're just that. Like, if you look at the little girl, I forget her name, she doesn't see them at all. Which is why we had to fight Abstract Daddy. He was actually the monster Angela sees, but James overlapped and he could see it in Fighter 2. Yeah. And there's different things other than Abstract Daddy. We never truly see what they both see. Laura, that was her name. She must not get any grief. She must be fairly innocent in the whole thing. Okay. This is fine. This is just dandy. Now, normally when there's dead bodies of these lying about, there's a pyramid head about. Explain later. Like a normal time to her. She's just done looking for Mary, but if she has no grief or she has no trauma, you know, what does the town feed on? What's all this? So it's just all of the save games. Jesus Christ. Wait. Look at James's face. Right? Kind of looking off. Can't look at himself. Right, okay. And he best not get a job installing mirrors. I need to reload everything. They don't really hold a huge amount of ammo. Right, okay. I really think you're like, oh, that's cool, for fuck's sake. Steam train? What's happening? Sir, what time do you call this? We land in a blitzball in the middle of my screen. That tells the state of mind. It is, bro. Oh, it's Maria. And Dos Pyramid Head, por favore.
Leave us both the hell alone.
I call this you, don't send me notifications. I go o'clock. I don't control the notifications being sent. Also, it's in the Discord as well. It sends them to Discord too. Maria, you gotta see her. We've established earlier that with the lack of reflection. Yeah. She's dead again. She'll be back in 5 minutes. Just give her 5. She'll be fine. She'll be fine. She'll be grand. Maybe you weren't here for it. Maybe no one was here for it. Maybe you were just chatting yourself. No, it was we put together a shattered mirror and then there was no James on the other side of it. Probably because she's shared with it. That's true. That was your Discord once. Didn't know me, so I left.
I know.
Is that Hook Boy? He's the problem. He's the problem. Well, Mike's Discord.
It's all
Notification comes up Mike's one as well.
I don't need you anymore.
Ban, 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 ban. The mod has gone mad. Oh, right. Oh, fuck. Two of them. Two of them.
I'm ready.
Are we ready, James? Fuck. Spear! Roman Reigns. Jesus. Things aren't going well. Fucking hell, lads.
Fucking diabolical.
Fucking diabolical. That wasn't me. I didn't break it. Oh, they're fucking throwing at me now. Shit, lads. No, I was nowhere near you. I was right beside your nuts. Fucking hell. I don't know which one I should be aiming at. I'm assuming by the building breaking down, that's me doing... Oh, there's a swipe, there's a swipe. Fucking hell. Well, that's not good. Fucking diabolical. Alright, okay. I don't think you even hurt him. I am. Right, okay. Oh, this is like a phase 2. Oh! Oh! Lads. Jesus. We could have been friends. That's the spirit. I don't know. I don't know what's next, and I don't know how much. What have you got, bro? Is that another apple? That's right, I have apples from earlier, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with them. Oh, it's an egg? I had 2 apples earlier, and it only let me do the one of them. I thought they put one in each door? Is that what it's telling me? No, can't open that door. Oh, it's just 2 doors, right, okay. Does it matter which door I go through? Is that a thing? The eggs go in the doors. They do. That's where I keep them. Oh, look at that. That's not cool. Shape your pitting, buddy. Yeah, let's see. Make sure everything's all reloaded up. Now, what's in here?
What do you want, James?
Not really. Explain later.
Flowers? I don't want any damn flowers.
Why do you not want my flowers for? I bought them for you.
Just go
I made
for
this
it.
for you.
Look at me. I'm disgusting. Between the disease and the drugs, I look like a monster. Well, what are you looking at? Get the hell out of here. Leave me alone already.
This corridor must be a nightmare to clean. Look how long it is. Imagine going up and down here with Hoover.
Anyway. It'd be easier if they just killed me.
Oh.
But I guess the hospital's making a nice profit off of me.
Over here for the one. Yeah, but like, how many charging points do you have to put it down here? Because it's not going to make it the whole way down.
Are you deaf? Don't come back.
Oh, we're back outside. With, oh, there's shitloads of ammo. I don't like the, oh, I really don't like this. Why is there so much ammo? No. Right, there's steps that go up. We'll go over here now and explore. Grab the rest of this ammo that's help that they've lying about. Ah, it's not good. Not with that attitude. No, with your attitude. Shape forces the mind. 26, right, okay. Did I go down? No, I don't. I go up. Clunk, 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 clunk. Up the steps we go. Clunk, 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 clunk. This is great. At least they thought well about health and safety. No one's fallen out of this thing. It is secure on all sides. Ooh, ladder. What a game this was on PS2. Oh, here we go. Oh, this is nice. It's nice and airy and stuff. Happy days. Airy Mary. There she is.
Mary?
Happy days, we saved her.
I have missed you so much.
How she got a letter out? I have no idea.
I've missed you too. We can finally be together.
We can fix her. We can.
Forever.
Or she can fix us. Stop us. Stop our murderous ways.
No.
No? James. Don't you go breaking no lips now, kid.
James. Honey. What's wrong?
I'm sorry. I know you tried,
James, please.
but she's gone. I know that now,
Stop it.
and I can't just keep pretending.
Shut up!
I know, because I killed her.
What do you want? Do you even know anymore? I'm yours.
Maria? Oh, her name changed?
I'm here for you. So what if I'm not her? I can give you what she never could. I can be better than her.
Yeah. Take it.
What else do you want me to be? What else can I be?
Are you still welcome, man? Oh my god, it's Letitia. It is. It is.
I'm
In the
so
flesh.
Sorry, Maria, I really am. But this has to stop.
Maria's fucking nuts.
It's time to let it go.
She's fine. Grand. Is that the Wish version of Leon? It is. James is. He's the Temu.com version of Leon. But they didn't install any personality. And a shapeshifter, it seems. That's fine. Let her shapeshift. That's grand.
No.
No?
What?
Ah,
I
Metal
won't let you
Gear.
do this to me. I won't let you go. I can't.
Oh. Ah, it's the thing from earlier. Oh, shit. Oh, I didn't even see where she went. Is the butterflies her then? I don't know what I should be watching out for. Can I just watch it for everything then? Right, okay. Reload faster, James. And a whopper? Is whoppage an answer? Right, okay, it's just like phase 2 now. Oh, she's getting sharper and pointer. I had the butterflies to stop them and shoot her in the baps. Right, okay. Oh, right, we have fallen. I have fallen down and I cannot get up. Where is she now? Oh, fuck, right, okay. Oh, shit! Damn it. Where'd she go? Hey, Cotton Eye Joe. Maria, where did you go? I cannot find you. Hey. Ooh, fuck, right up in ship. Ooh, but more dangerous, this is her. Okay. Alright, what's happening? James, what's going on? Oh, we're back up here. How did we get up here again? She's gone ethereal. I can't see her. Oh, there she is. Right, okay, okay. Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Come on, Maria. Maria. Oh, that's not good. Ammo on that one. I don't even know what's after this. Screechy noises, okay. Oh, right, okay. Energy juice. Okay, is this her? Is this her? Or is there another phase? Quick, get a pillow! Our weakness is pillows to the face. Wait, is it actually our weakness? Is our weakness pillows to the face? Wah!
Mary.
Hey, handsome.
GG? I don't know. Phase 4. Mary's in a suit of armor. Mary is Master Chief.
Don't be. I told you. I wanted the pain to end.
Oh, it was just lazy then.
Yeah,
Look at other critter. I know.
you did.
Does it ever explain what she had, though? I mean, what was her condition?
But that's not why I did it.
Cancer? Right, okay.
The truth is, I hated you. I wanted you out of the way.
Never explained, but heavily implied. Right, okay.
I wanted my life back.
If that's true, then why do you look so sad?
Mary.
It's okay, James. Here.
Can't blame him for the pillow. Well, no. Still not a thing.
What is this?
It's all about palliative care at that point, like.
It's what you've been looking for.
Oh, it's conflicting. You don't want to see anybody in pain, but you just want to ease somebody's suffering at that point. So here, please don't get a cold. Flemish is sitting there with a pillow. Hot sauce I want. Kill the kid. Okay, crude water cooling painting. It is. She was in awe because of the treatment that she wanted to die, and he was suffering and losing his life at a young age and selling out. Yeah, but it's still not an excuse. We've actually discussed this. If I ever return home, we're going to Switzerland. But what if he can't get there? So, can I tell you the impacts of the end, each end at your end now? No. I want to see my own ending. Stop you spoiling things. You got the leave ending.
Dreams. I see that town.
I don't know what that means.
Silent Hill.
No, I'm saying like what you did. All right, okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Take me there again someday.
This I actually agree with. Serious
You
topic.
never did.
Should be a choice for people.
Well, I'm alone there now. In our special place.
Because he just leaves Silent Hill.
Waiting for
He
you
doesn't, because it's loop there. He goes back to the start.
come and see me. But you never do. So, I wait. Wrapped in my cocoon of pain and loneliness. I know I've done a terrible thing to you. I wish I could change that, but I can't. I feel so pathetic and ugly laying here. Every day I stare up at the cracks in the ceiling, and all I can think
but I
about
think,
is how unfair it is.
like, did she want to die, or did he see it out? That's the difference.
The doctor
How often
came
you read
today,
Mary's letter, picking up her handkerchief
told me
when
I
you
could
first
go
see the
home
Pyramid Head,
for
how
a
often you
short
interact
stay.
with Maria, how frequently you
It's
heal,
not that I'm getting
remain low
better.
health,
It's
which
just that
Apple used, which door
this could
used,
be my
and
last chance.
if you listen to Mary in the long corridor.
Even
Right, okay.
so, I'm
Yeah, she
glad
wanted to
be
as well, but
coming home.
she didn't mean by pillow. She's like, no,
I missed you
give me
so
painkillers and knock me out. No, I'll suffocate you with this pillow. It's much
But
better.
I'm
Much better.
afraid, James. I'm afraid you don't really want me to come home. Every time you come to see me, I can tell how hard it is on you. I don't know if
It's fine,
you
Mary.
hate
Look at the
me
duck files.
or
Yes.
pity me.
Smell the fragrance of the pillow.
Maybe I just disgust you. I'm so sorry. When I first learned I was gonna die, I couldn't accept it. I was so angry. I struck out at everyone I loved. Especially you. And that's why I understand if you hate me. But I want you to know.
You also have to
I
play the
will
game like James
always
is a death wish.
love you. Even though
Well,
our
he pretty
life
much
together
does.
had
He
to
does
end
the
like
amount of
this.
things that man does that
I
a
still
normal
wouldn't
person in
trade
that
it for the
situation wouldn't do.
world.
Is that a giant hole I can't see the bottom of? I'm jumping in there. Is that a small gap under there that I can hear something in the next room? I'm going to
This
crawl
letter
through.
has gone on too long.
Fuck off, James.
So, I'll say goodbye. I told the nurse to give this to you after.
Big Boss, thank you for interrupting this really,
Which
really
means
sad
that
scene
as
with a
for
picture of a
me,
breath
I'm
and
already
Nickelback.
dead.
I appreciate it.
But that's
The reason
okay.
James is punished for two reasons. The real world,
I'm not afraid of it.
Snake.
the one asset, yeah, in the original game. The other reason is because he wants to be dead and sees every corpse of
But
him.
you remember
Or-
me for who I was.
Or Flamash, or
Not what the
because he
disease
is
made
looping
me.
through Silent Hill constantly. It's previous versions
I
of
want
himself
you
he's finding.
to go on.
Anytime, mate. Thank you, Big Boss.
I want you to live.
Mash, he needs
For
to pay
yourself.
start time for back to come out to the
And for
cars in the
others.
morning. No, for fuck's sake. No. You can't just say
You did
no
for
when you're
me.
wrong. I also learned a lot from this scene. There's a
James.
well-drawn graph. I know. The graph is how many windows James
You
smashed.
made me happy.
Big Boss, thank you for checking in as well. A scout. You're getting really good points across there. I know. Yeah, so they just walk off into the fog. Okie dokie. You probably have to play the game multiple times to get the other endings. You know, go back to the beginning and replay it in some sort of loop. So technically that makes all endings canon. Gengar, thank you very much for stealing the championship off Tomahawk. So he could have just left. At any point, he could have just walked out. There was points at the start where I tried to walk in. He was like, no, I need to go in and find out what my dead wife sent this letter for. I agree, mate. In fact, I feel these points should be better represented with a graph. Or some sort of pie chart. He could, but he came here to die. And now he's found a small girl who he shall also murder. That was exceptional. That was really good. That was a phenomenal game. It was creepy. It was squelchy. Great story. The sound design, phenomenal. Phenomenal. Really, really enjoyed that one. Definitely something to the credits though. Oh. Alright, so standard, ending leave, ending clear, 1 out of 8. So Mary is actually only dead about 3 days. She's in the back seat of the car at the start of the game. He came to kill himself while driving the lake with her. I never played the Hawks and the backtracks back in the day. You completing this now means I don't have to. Thanks, Leyoric. Big boss, I did it for you. I did it for you. This is the water ending. It says ending leave. Oh no, that's the water ending he's talking about. Right, okay. Water end. Number times check map. 483. Yes, check your map. Total enemies killed. Favorite weapon, steel pipe. Fucking right. Fucking right. Number of dodges performed, 873. Times deed, 6. Not bad. Not bad stats. And the water ending is the cannon ending. You're the fucking cannon. I think you just make all this stuff up. You just love to make this shit up. Now he's just wandering up with Laura, leaving dead Mary in the car. Somebody gets in the car. No, what? This is the only car. It doesn't have smashed windows. Let's take it. What's that smell? What's talking about is the water ending. Right, okay. A water cannon ending? I know it must be like Waterworld, but in Portrush. Where go read up on it. The Marie ending is the one everyone says is loop theory. That was the riots a few weeks back. You've gained access to New Game Plus. Oh, it's like restarting the game again, like some sort of loop. My God. Blamash, have you read up about the photographs that you collect? Have you read up about them yet? And what they say? Gotta wash. Look at that fucking graph. You know, Jack Kroger's right. He's right. Photograph. Photograph. Yes. Oh, that was amazing. Really enjoyed that. So Maria's ending is he leaves with Maria and she coughs, implying the history will repeat itself. Not necessarily.
Tell me what you want.
Please don't. You are on the ball.
Excuse me?
Leo.
No. What do you say? Bitch. No. No.
Leo.
I'm not gonna give you a treat if you call me that. What do you say?
Hear movement? I can hear movement. Whether she's coming or not. The photograph now, mostly memories from what I can remember. No, there's a code that people have discovered in the photographs and it says you have been here for 2 decades. Puppy dog? Oh, we just have a tail. There we go. Look at her nom 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 on our treat. Now, I'm not clued in because it's the remake thing. It is. So the theory now at the moment is that loop theory is not a thing in the original game, but this isn't actually a remake. This is a sequel to the original game, and James has been looping in Silent Hill for 20 years. It's a good puppy. It's a good girl. Look at her. Look at her with her nom noms. Look at her. Yeah. She's the best. She's best Wayne. Best Wayne. But that was amazing. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, I know I'm giving you grief about it, but I actually really can see why you love that game. It's fucking class. Lincoln, you'll miss it. I know. Great game. So next game, and there's a couple of reasons for this. One is I'm a massive Transformers fan, but the next game on Saturday is going to be Transformers Devastation. It's a shorter game. It's played maybe Platinum Games, very, very action heavy. It's kind of a palate cleanser before we move into something else more horror. And the other reason is what I brought up the other night is it's a delisted game. It is a game that you cannot no longer buy digitally, and you have to play it physically. And it's kind of in retribution of Sony's fucking really ridiculous decision to go purely digital. Looking at it now, so I know the devs of the game gave a nod to loop theory, but they never confirmed that was anything other than a nod. And yeah, that's true. No one has confirmed it either way. That's the thing. Thank Christ it wasn't the PlayStation version. No, it's Xbox version. We played on Xbox. No, I played this on PlayStation, but it's only because it was free on PlayStation Plus, so I didn't have to purchase the game. But you need to title a stream about that point. The physical media. Yes, actually, it's a good idea. I was going to just put up Transformers Devastation, D for delisted. They're remaking it on PS5 just for you. Big Boss, I can't wait till you play this game and we can enjoy it with you. So what's going to happen is it won't take too long. Devastation might be 1 or 2 streams. And then after that, it's going to be Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil Biohazard, which I know Big Boss also loves. So it's another game that you're a big fan of. Can't we use download code inside the box? Or turn around on Christmas Day and the kids are coming down. What scent they get me? And it's just a whole pile of wee bits of paper with codes on it. So many raccoons. I know, because it's Raccoon City 6, that's why. Raccoon City 6. And that's why there's so many of them. The original creator and writers are very much Loop Theory's nonsense. Yes, but they have nothing to do with the remake. They are the creators of the original game. Their opinion doesn't matter. So they can go fuck themselves. No joke, one Christmas I got a piece of paper with a written code in it from Flowmash. But was it something like maybe PlayStation Plus or like some sort of membership or subscription? Or did he get a code off loaded.com and send it to you? Because I've done that before where this is Shima from stream. Oh, Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. I've done that before with the buff from loaded.com. Yeah, but the remake is pretty much one-on-one, additional 3 rooms. Yes, but that's the whole point. It's not the same game. It's a sequel to the Silent Hill 2. And James has been stuck here for 20 years, looping through the same story over and over again. Here's an idea. Buy some digital code. Cut it. Nah, it's not a sequel, remake. Flamash, why can you never accept anyone else's point of view? You don't have to be right at all times. And most of the time, you're actually wrong. So, have you not learned to maybe just stop? Buying some digital code, cut it up, hide it about the house with a code hunt, and they have to try and put it together then. Or is it a remaster? Or revisioning? And that's why a lot of the things weren't the exact same as the original game, and I kept doing flashbacks of previous memories that I had. Because it's a remake, Loop Theory is actively dismissed by the community as being canon, both the OG and remake. Doesn't matter if it doesn't matter. It's heavily implied in the game. Problem is, I think you're wrong. I think you're really, really wrong. And I think you're sitting there vibrating in your chair now, and Sierra's looking over at you, and you're shouting at your screen, and she's like, why are you shouting at your screen? I can't hear you. And you're just really, really upset about it. And I find it hilarious. And it entertains me. Your anger entertains me so. And I think that's why I keep saying it. Don't remove the code. And you probably get an honest review of that game. But yeah, so Saturday night's going to be Transformers. And it's more of a palate cleanser than anything. It's like a very, very light, fast-paced game. Very, very action. No, the take about the photos and the memories it's just a reference. Everything that you don't agree with is just a reference. If it doesn't fit with my narrative, it's a reference. It's a nod. And because the community has played it for the last 20 years, no, that's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. There's secret photos littered around it, and they have a hidden code which the community found out, and which you only found out about like 3 minutes ago, but now you're an expert on. Fuck up. They changed the story up in a significant way. I would say sequel, literally beat for beat. It doesn't have to. They don't have to go by your rules. They can make their own thing. They don't have to say sequel. You can discover it on your own. Anyway, dog needs walked. Oh, he's huffing now. He's gonna march with the dog, and the wee dog is gonna be catching up going. But thank you, folks. I am going to raid out now. It's a little bit earlier than usual, but we finished the game, so power walking coming per dog. He's going to have to carry it. Wee dog's going to be like, shit. No. I already know who I'm going to raid tonight. So May, I was on chat with her earlier on. She is playing Resident Evil 2.
How are you still alive?
How am I still alive, Big Boss? Thank you very much for the sub. Appreciate it. 8 months. My God, man. Thank you. Appreciate you using your Prime on me. And Claire, why did you shout at me? I'm going with him. So I'll have to run after him. Just jump on his back. Get him to carry you. Get him to carry. So she's in the room now with the maiden statue and the liquor. So we are going to raid under. What we're going to do first is we're going to see if you have beat the boss. I don't think so. I don't think the boss has been beat. But I'm going to do it anyway. We'll bring it up. Bring it up. Annihilator, you son of a bitch. Thank God that monster had the
Backlash. Backlash.
Backlash.
At Backlash.
I like the way it covers my face as well. Beat the boss. The boss is not beat tonight, unfortunately. So
At Backlash.
At Backlash.
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 At Backlash.
At Backlash.
Knock. Knock got me with the headphones all
Backlash.
turned way up. And it was you did the knock too. It was you did the knock and you got yourself.
Backlash.
Duchess, what's happening?
Oh, hello, Papa.
Just come on.
I was
All the
just
redeems.
about to
wants to be a cat.
What is the crack, Dutch? We are about to raid May, and May is playing through Resident Evil 2 at the moment. You will all get along well with her. She is an absolute beacon of positivity and really, really high energy. So if you could copy in a raid message and say hello to her, very much appreciated. Duchess, I am just about to raid out, but I hope you had a good stream earlier as well. And I will be back playing Transformers on Saturday. There was so much happening. Big Boss, thank you very much for the gigantified Bosshausen. I did. I hope you had I had a brilliant stream. Really, really enjoyed myself. A lot of fun. But I will see you folks on Saturday, and I will chat to you later. Bye-bye.
Fucking diabolical.